Welcome into Lions Central Radio. I am Nick Castora. Brandon Liscu is alongside for the ride as always. And folks, we don't do this often, but we're jumping right in. Jeff Risdon's alongside with us as well to start the program. He was actually at the Lions-Browns game on Saturday. So Jeff, you're with us on the program right now. How are you this evening?
Very good, guys. Good to be with you again.
Let me start here with you. What did you think? What was your biggest takeaway, at least from the first preseason game?
Well, it was nice to see the crowd. There was over 50,000 people there. Most of them were there to see Johnny football, but they got to see some things from the Lions too that were fairly. It was a pretty bland game plan, and honestly, it was pretty much of a dog of a game to be at. There wasn't a lot going on. It wasn't necessarily good defense more than it was poor offense from both sides. So it could have been a better game. I'm hoping that we see a little bit more out of the offense this coming week.
Well, yeah, it kind of reminded me of last year's season-ending Minnesota game and the fact that it was just unwatchable, obviously for different reasons this time. I saw that while everybody's talking about Moore and Orlovsky, and I saw that you had written a piece about it. So right now, would you personally, I know Caldwell's not going to, but would you put Moore in before Orlovsky next week?
I absolutely would. I want to see what he can do with the second unit. And possibly even with some of the first unit. And I think, I don't know, but I think that would probably dispel some of the momentum of Kellen Moore going forward. My main advocacy for Moore has been that Dan Orlovsky's been awful. I've been at camp 3 times. I was there last Wednesday night at Ford Field when he threw interception after interception after interception, after Bill Bentley drops an interception, after Tulloch drops an interception, after Bentley drops another interception. It was awful. It was one of the worst quarterback performances I've ever seen. I went to Ohio University in the 90s. I know bad quarterbacking. This was under level. So it's. I don't think Kellen Moore is the answer either, but I know that Orlovsky is not the answer.
And isn't that kind of what, I mean, for the preseason, we know what Orlovsky's all about. We've seen him for however many years now in different spots, but when we trot Orlovsky back out next week, I mean, there's not going to be drastic improvement or getting worse one way or the other. So wouldn't, to your point, we'd want to see more because whether it be upside or downside, there's something new to him and at least giving him a chance to see what he can do.
Yeah, and you know what? The players, to a man, love Kellen Moore. He's a great guy. He's a wonderful guy to talk to. He's a good teammate. He's a good listener. He works hard in practice. He's really worked his butt off to get to be a better quarterback. I mean, we saw him 2 years ago when he came out of Boise. He had a laughable arm. He's improved that now. It's still not good, but it's a lot better than it was. Let's reward him for his hard work and throw the fans a little bit of a bone. Let him see what he can do. Like I said, I'm not overly optimistic that he will tear things up, but he needs to at least show that he can be better than Dan Orlovsky, because we know what Orlovsky is, and the things that he's not good at, he's not going to get any better at. He's not going to read the plays any quicker. He's not going to get the ball out with his looping delivery any quicker. He's not going to deliver the ball down the field with more authority. That's just not going to happen. He's been around for, this is his 9th year, I think. Let's see what the young guy can do.
Yeah, when I realized how long he had been in the league, I think we actually talked about it, Nick and I, sometime early this offseason. Wow, how has he done this? And as you were saying, so basically it sounds like he can't be a better quarterback. So are there any other options? Would you sign, say, Kyle Orton and bring him in, or try anything, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks?
I wouldn't necessarily go after Kyle Orton. I would look at who the Saints cut. Because they do have a battle going on for their second quarterback spot, and they're only going to keep 2. And the loser of that battle is going to know Joe Lombardi's offense, and he can't be any worse than either guy we've got right now. And in order to judge that, like I said, you do have to play more, but I'd like to see what they could get there. The Browns cut Tyler Thigpen today. He's been a guy that I've always sort of liked. Some of that goes back to the fact that I interviewed him in the draft process, and he did just a spot-on perfect Brett Favre imitation that's always stuck with me. So that's probably why I like him a little more than I should. He stunk in the game last week, so maybe that should rule him out. There will be some guys coming free, though, who are guys that are not necessarily going to push Stafford, but can be a little bit more of a sounding board for him and offer a little bit more upside than what Kyle Orton, who's I think 31, 32 years old, and crushed Dallas's playoff hopes with a terrible throw last year. So I would rather steer towards somebody that's a little bit younger, maybe with a little more upside that can stick around for a year or two.
Kind of moving back to the game against Cleveland, was there a player who, for you, jumped out and impressed you more than others?
There were a couple of guys. George Wynn was phenomenal running the football, other than his fumble. He looked really, really strong. And I've been fairly impressed with Mikel LaShore in camp, and he had a couple of nice runs in the game too, but I think Wynn offers a little bit more for that power back. They're going to keep 4 running backs, and if Wynn can show that he can hold the football, he's got a little bit more upside. He's got a little bit more juice in his legs than LaShore does, so I'd like to see that. Corey Fuller, aside from catching the touchdown pass, he had a couple of routes. The Lions didn't run much vertical, but when they did, he did it, and he ran past Pierre Desir and had 3 steps on him on a post route about 25 yards down the field. Orlovsky never even looked there, but it happened right in front of us where we were sitting, so it was nice to see that. He's had a very good camp too, so it's nice to see some of the young guys that are a little bit unheralded, showing a little bit of promise there.
Well, speaking of Pierre Desir, plenty of Lions fans were disappointed that they didn't grab him when they had the chance back in the draft. So who did you think of this game who disappointed you the most? Who did you expect more out of?
I got to go Stephen Tulloch. I actually, this game wound up being the game where my phone stored all my tweets that didn't send because I couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi in Ford Field. It was very frustrating. My first 3 tweets were all negatives about Stephen Tulloch. He had a rotten game. And it's something that bears watching going forward because he has not been great in camp either, and he didn't finish last year all that well. He looks a little bit heavier, and he certainly looks a little bit slower, especially going side to side. He got absolutely torched on a simple flat route where it was his responsibility to go out and cover Marquise Gray, and he didn't see it and didn't get out there in time and gave up a huge gain. The very next snap, he badly overran a gap that he had containment on and gave up another big run there. So, and he did that a couple other times too. If he's not good in the middle, Detroit has even bigger problems on defense than most people think they do. And so that's my big concern coming out of the first game was, we know that the secondary is going to be a little bit shaky. We know that the defensive line is good but might not be all that productive. But if the linebackers aren't great, this unit's going to be in trouble. And I'm a little more worried about Stephen Tulloch than I probably should be, but I want people to know that it's not a given that he's going to be as good as he has been.
Well, sticking with that middle linebacker position, I thought Tahir Whitehead looked noticeably thicker, especially across the top. Is he a guy that, like maybe Ashley Palmer, he can have a ceiling as somebody that is a solid backup, a solid reserve now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ashley Palmer has also played well throughout camp. And he did a couple of good things in the game. I think they have 2 very quality backup linebackers, and they're happy with them. I know they are. I've talked to people on the team and some coaches. They feel pretty comfortable with those as the 2 backups. Now, if they're pressed into a situation where they have to go deeper than that, Justin Jackson's probably a practice squad guy, and that's it. They don't have anybody else around. None of the other guys are sticking, probably even on a practice squad this year. So hopefully everybody stays healthy, and Van Noy, he's going to wind up starting over Ashley Palmer just because he offers so much more. But I do think Palmer is going to play some, especially in heavier packages when they will run some 4-4s too. You are going to see that, especially against teams that like to run 2 tights. So it's nice to have Palmer, stepping up a little bit and having Whitehead as somebody who's going to be a little bit better than just a special teams guy this year.
Looking at the defensive line and maybe the defensive ends and the rotation that we're going to see, I liked a lot of what I saw out of Jason Jones and Devin Taylor. What did you think of the defensive line as a whole and maybe the baby steps towards the rotation that they're going to have?
Oh man, the first thing you got to notice about these they're huge.
Yeah.
And Cleveland's got a very good defensive line too, but Detroit's line dwarfs them. I mean, Taylor and now you're getting Anza back, and Jason Jones did play very well, and he's also played very well in camp sliding inside to tackle. In fact, he got some first team reps at tackle in a couple of the practices I was at. while Sue or Fairley got a breather. So there's so much potential there. George Johnson, he's been shot out of a cannon. I don't know where this guy came from. I don't know how he failed so badly before. Apparently he's lost a bit of weight, but man, he's got a lightning first step, and he's got violent hands. That's a very good combination to work with. So sorting out how all that's going to play, because you do have Larry Webster figuring in there too. He's going to make the team. He might or might not be a game day active based on how well he does on special teams. You got Darryl Tapp, who's a quality veteran. You know, they're stacked at defensive end. Now, it has to produce. They haven't necessarily put up the results you want to see yet. But, man, there is just so much potential there. It is very exciting to think of how many guys they can bring into the rotation and just attack in waves. It's a real nice luxury to have.
Well, calling back to violent hands, it seems the perfect phrase to sum up Reggie Bush, at least in my estimation. And a few weeks ago, Nick and I were talking about the most overrated player in the Lions roster. I went with Bush, you went with Tulloch.
It got heated.
It did get a little heated. We need you to, one, go ahead and identify for us whether Bush is underrated, properly rated, or overrated. And two, who do you think is the most overrated player on the roster?
See, Reggie Bush, it's a bit of a different thing because there's a national perception of him and there's a Detroit perception of him that are different. And this happened to him when he was in New Orleans, too. And I think the national perception of him is probably a little bit higher than it should be. But I think most Detroit fans have a pretty good grasp of where he is. They maybe overrate his ability just a little bit, but you know they're more acutely aware than the national public of the drops and the half-assed runs around the tackle where there's just nothing there and he just sort of concedes. So I think maybe a kiss overrated, but not terribly much so. I would say Tulloch is probably a little bit more overrated, and certainly more overrated by Lions fans.
It's great to hear you say that, Jeff.
Well, I'm not playing any favorites on that. But he's, like I said, he didn't finish last year well. And I think a lot of fans hold up he didn't score all that badly on Pro Football Focus. And, you can get into that debate if you want, but my personal, what I saw was less than what they graded him. I saw a guy who was slipping and probably played a little bit too much, and I'm hoping that's, maybe his legs are just going to come back. But right now, if you're expecting him to be a top 10 inside linebacker in the league, you're going to be very disappointed because he is not. I actually think that one of the more overrated guys is probably, gosh, I hate to say it already, but I mean, Eric Ebron. I mean, he's getting so much love, and he's just not there yet. I mean, let's see him play a game before we're putting him in Jimmy Graham and Jordan Cameron conversations and Vernon Davis. Let's let him prove that he's better than Joe Fourier, which he hasn't done yet.
He's bringing a lot of that on himself, though, too.
Yeah. Yeah, he's one. There's not a lot of overrated lines because just, the national perception of the team is probably, if anything, that it needs to be higher. It's underrated, the total overall talent on this team. Fairly might fit in that category, but let's see what he does with the new coaching staff. They had a big thing with him today, sitting him down, making him run with the second unit. My spies tell me that it was because he didn't make weight. I don't know if that's verifiable or not, but that's what I've heard. And I will say that when I saw him in June and when I saw him last week, he had definitely gained some weight. So let's see what goes on with that. But there's a lot of people that think he's a legit top 5 talent. And I think the Lions were very keen on and smart to not extend him when they did and make him play for his supper.
Good one.
Well,
it's a pretty big supper for him, so he's got to earn a big check for that.
And with that, Jeff, we've got plenty more preseason football and training camp action, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk to you again pretty soon.
Yeah, anytime, guys, anytime. Thanks for having me on.
Jeff.
Thanks. All right. So, Brandon, are you still happy you threw that softball to Jeff and then had him agree with me on all fronts?
What? That Reggie Bush is overrated? I don't believe that was on. That was in your.
Who did he say was the most overrated player on the team?
Well,
You glossed over that fact.
it's significant. You know, he's not. Not everybody can be right all the time.
Risdon was your ace in the hole, and he turned on you.
Well, my whole thing was I needed to make sure that Reggie Bush was considered uh, overrated. I did get a little bit of confirmation, so I'm a positive guy, Nick. I'm gonna hold on
Yeah.
to that.
All right, you know what? And it's I think we spent like 15 minutes on that debate in the past, so we won't rehash it for you folks here. We'll get more into the present, what's happening. The Lions Browns matchup. Great to talk to Jeff and get his insight into it. But you
Oh,
guys want to hear?
Nick, hold on. Did you hear about Ziggy?
Oh gosh, I thought we were gonna go over. Okay, Ziggy, what do you got?
He's gonna play.
Oh boy, when?
Well, actually, he's not going to play this week.
Oh, geez,
Apparently,
there you go.
Caldwell has said that they're going to bring him along slowly,
Yeah.
and so he won't be playing against the Raiders. Which, you know, it's okay. I've waited this long. I can keep waiting, but it's certainly exciting to hear that he's going to be on the practice field.
Yeah, and we'll see Calvin at some point in the preseason too. I'm sure. I mean, even with Ziggy, I really don't care if he's in there week 2 against Oakland or even week 3. I mean, I'd like to see him a little bit, at least one game in the preseason. But I'm not, I'm not too worried about multiple preseason games for these guys. They were in the offense and the defense last year. I'm just Ziggy, get healthy and maybe a little bit of preseason action is plenty.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that does concern me is I don't know if he's going to be running kind of multiple positions, much like Van Noy. I imagine he is just because of his
He's a physical
athleticism.
freak.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Take a shot, everybody. But that does concern me a bit. He's been getting mental reps. At the worst, and some of the quotes that I saw is they're going to be doing a lot of things that they did. Basically, he's going to have the same role as last year in a lot of ways. Go get the quarterback. So hopefully it won't take him long to get back up to speed.
Yeah. So don't count on him against Oakland. We'll see maybe week 3 or 4. We don't have that update for you folks yet. Hopefully we'll see Calvin at some point too. It was only week 1, but still I wanted that series with Calvin in there, and seeing him in sweatpants was a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, well, got to be careful.
It's week 1 of the preseason, but there were plenty of guys that did play in week 1 of the preseason, and we talked to Jeff about them. But let's get our hot takes for him, Brandon. That's what the people are here to hear. I wanted to just give a little bit on Orlovsky, and I mean he really was bad, but I'm not sure what the expectation was for Dan Orlovsky coming in, just because, like we said, he's an 8 or 9 year vet, whatever it may be. His ceiling, and he's reached it. So I would gladly have Kellen Moore step into the 2 spot for the next game, maybe game 3 of the preseason, just to see how he handles it, because how Orlovsky's going to handle it, and the ceiling has been reached. So why not give it to Moore and give him a chance? And if he fails, he fails, but at least you can see if he is better than Orlovsky.
Well, here's some of the things that I want to point out. I went back and I watched every play at least 3 or 4 times, and then after watching more at the end of the game, I went back and watched the Orlovsky throws.
Tough to watch.
Well, there is something that Risdon is right on the money. He's a slow decision maker, and that killed him in a lot of ways. There were a few throws where he kind of got it out quickly, but there were also 7 throws that you can kind of take out of his final numbers, which would end up making him like 13 for 15. And the reason is that because he had 3 throwaways where they either covered the screen and he smartly threw the ball at somebody's feet. There were 3 drops. I mean, that throw that he had to Stephen Miller, I want to say it was early 3rd, maybe 2nd. I can't remember now.
Middle of the 3rd quarter, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a beautiful ball, and Miller dropped it. So that's 3 drops, and then there was one where he turned around after the play action, and there was a Brown literally in his face before he had turned all the way around. So I think
he somehow threw it, yeah.
There's somewhat of a little bit of exaggeration on it. I mean, far be it from the media to blow up anything like Ziggy Ansah's
shot.
All-pro potential every year. But getting back to the topic, Orlovsky had to deal with a lot of pressure, and Moore dealt with none. So while I do agree that Moore played better, I don't want to go ahead and say that Moore is better. And that's a scary proposition. I mean, give Moore his props. He made some quick, easy throws, kind of got going, and that beautiful ball to Fuller at the end. I mean, that was I mean, like it was beautiful. There's no better word. But I'm definitely not going to hand over the reins to Moore and feel good about it.
Yeah, let's not anoint him the backup yet, but I definitely want to see more of more, I guess, and let's give him a chance in the next couple games. But looking at the game as a whole, I think Jeff touched on it. Gosh, I mean, we knew the offense and even the defense were going to be vanilla, basic packages, but I mean, this was just about as dry play calling as you can possibly have.
Yeah, I mean, there were how many throws down the field? I don't think I saw more than
Two?
maybe two that traveled over 15 yards in the air.
Oh,
And it obviously not taking into account throwing across the field. But that's what you have to expect.
I know.
You're not gonna show your aces at the very beginning in a preseason game.
No, it doesn't make it the most exciting thing to watch. So, I mean, the defense, you noted it here. The defense had 0 sacks. I mean, they just weren't. There wasn't really pressure. I mean, Manziel ran around a bit, and you saw us get to him when he was moving around. But when they sat in the pocket, the pressure just really wasn't there.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed with the lack of just penetration. I think from the outside, I thought there were a couple guys like Greg Hickman had a great game. He ended up rating, I think, a 4.0 on Pro Football Focus, was probably Detroit's highest grade. And every time I kind of spotlighted him, he was in the backfield. It was very impressive. I didn't see it coming from him. I thought some of the backup defensive tackles, Reed also played pretty well, but the defensive ends, they didn't do anything.
No, I mean, there's going to be a heavy rotation of them, as we've mentioned, and the play calling is vanilla as it's going to get. Terrell Austin's not going to show us what he can do play calling wise. I mean, Jason Jones and Devin Taylor, I liked what I saw out of both of them, as I noted to Jeff. I thought they had some nice plays, but yeah, just no pressure in the backfield, which was, I mean, that's going to change moving forward, but still, it's worth a note. What did you think of Eric Ebron?
Well, it seemed very indicative of his training camp so far. He was used all over the place, and he never quite looked completely comfortable.
Yeah.
He didn't start out blocking so well. He wasn't brought in to be Michael Williams. He was brought in to be a guy who can really cause a lot of problems in the secondary. But he actually did kind of settle in and block all right after that. The catch he had was pretty nice. Other than that, ho-hum.
Yeah, it was ho-hum. I mean, I didn't see anything negative from him, if that's a positive takeaway, I guess. I didn't see him do anything too bad. The blocking, I thought, was fine, and he had the one catch. So, I mean, there's going to be a heavy scrutiny, a big showcase on Ebron throughout the preseason and seeing what he does. And for a first effort, I was fine with what he put in. Defensively, I really liked what I saw out of Nevin Lawson, the undersized corner that we took in the draft, and we noted him earlier. But he had a couple of nice tackles. I thought he looked pretty good in coverage. I didn't think that for a rookie in his first preseason game, I didn't think he looked too overwhelmed out there, which, I mean, it's only the first preseason game, but it was good to see from him.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. One of the problems right now with the tape you can get as far as from NFL.com, at least I haven't been able to get the coaches film that you can get for the regular season, so I couldn't see the whole field. But the way that he was tackling was great.
Yeah.
I think Martin Mayhew called him scrappy shortly after the draft, and the word I actually have in my notes here is feisty. He did have that holding penalty, but there was one play in particular where there was a quick screen in the third, and everybody's over pursuing. Lawson came from the other side of the field, sat down, broke down, and made the right tackle. He didn't over pursue it, and I was thoroughly impressed with his physicality.
Yeah, opposite so for the linebackers who really just weren't very good in coverage in this game. And Jeff touched on Tulloch. Well, not touched on. He broke down Tulloch's game, which wasn't very good. But the whole unit really just wasn't great in this game.
No, well, that's kind of. Let's go ahead and talk about Van Noy. I don't think we even got into that with Risdon, which is kind of surprising. What did you think of his performance in particular?
I didn't. I mean, I noticed him because I was looking for him, but as I went back and watched the film more and more, I didn't even see Kyle Van Noy out there. I guess, is a lost puppy the right way to put it? I mean, I don't think he had a tackle in this game. He might have had a deflection at one point, but I didn't think he'd be someone that was overwhelmed. But he was. I didn't notice him much. I thought he was overpowered when he was engaged with offensive linemen. I didn't see him causing pressure. I mean, it's only his first effort, and we're going to say that over and over again with these guys, but I didn't see anything from Kyle Van Noy.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised because he got I mean, as low a positive grade as you can get, he got a .1. I thought that was a little kind. He had one missed tackle, no tackles, and he had a quarterback hurry. Now, I don't know if that also comes with that missed tackle. that play kind of concerned me was when he went in on Johnny Manziel. I think it was 3rd and 1, and Manziel is bootlegging. If Van Noy kind of ran straight at him, you can't do that with Johnny
there was
football.
no angle to it. No,
No,
come on.
and he lost contain. Manziel got the outside, picked it up. Obviously, the not quite strip that's the type of play they brought him on for, though. So that was exciting to see, at least.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll see plenty more of him. He's going to probably get more snaps than just about anyone the rest of the preseason. They're going to give him plenty of chances to showcase what he can do. Nate Freese, we've talked about the battle with him and Tavecchio for the kicker job, but Freese was the one to take and make both field goals that the Lions had in this game. And I mean, neither of them was long kicks, but I mean, he made them both, and he looked pretty solid.
Yeah, there's nothing really to report, I guess you'd say, in a way. He did his job, which is kind of all you really want from a field goal kicker. I don't know how many times we're going to get to see him try a 54-yarder in the next 2 games. I don't know that I'm as sold on it as everybody else, though, is that he has that position locked up. Tavecchio wasn't kind of kept away from kicking any field goals. I think the whole plan was that he would handle the second half because he did do the kickoff. And he did take the extra point, which it's a 33-yard field goal. Oh, it's a 33-yard field goal these days. So, it's kind of I still think it's neck and neck. I don't think there's really anything you can take from that. But that's
no, Tavecchio just didn't have the chance in the second half because we didn't have a field goal opportunity. But, I mean, Freese at least, there's no negative here. He took and made both field goals that he did attempt, so good on him, and we'll see how this battle continues to go forth in the preseason. One other guy on offense that I wanted to at least note was Mikel Leshore, who he had 8 carries for 31 yards, and I think Wynn took a bit of the wind out of his sails with some of his lengthier runs and how good he did. But, I mean, looking past Wynn for a second and focusing on Leshore, I thought his carry, I thought he looked pretty good. I mean, it wasn't against starters or anything, but he had those 8 carries for 31 yards, and he's someone that's going to run downhill, and he did, and 4 or 5 yards a carry. If Mikel Leshore does find a role on this team, that's obviously it, is just bulldozing through the middle, and he at least looked decent doing it.
Yeah, I thought he did his job, and that was why I think he might have a spot on this roster, unless Wynn can take it if he's physical enough. Leshore offers something that the other guys don't. And there were even a couple times that he showed me some vision. There was at the end of the first quarter, Lucas had fought his way to a standstill with 2 Browns crashing on the left side where Leshore was supposed to head. He smartly and quickly, which is shocking, cut it inside, and he picked up a tough 3 yards. And I watched that play, I think, 8 times because I was shocked. I didn't see that coming. Mm-hmm. But he was also good in pass protection, and he showed some good vision with physicality, but he just doesn't consistently show vision, and that's still concerning.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a running back that's ever going to excite you with lengthy runs, but I do think there could be a role for. I mean, now we have a fullback in the offense, which is exciting to see, I guess. But there could be a role for that downhill runner, and I think Wynn. I mean, I don't know if we want to get into it, but I think Wynn is just. I mean, he's too much in the vein of Bush and Riddick, and I just don't see it. I mean, he looked good. I just don't know if there's a spot for him with how many running backs are already on this carousel.
Well, we didn't really get to see much of Riddick. I don't know why that didn't even dawn on me till right now. I haven't heard anybody talk about him.
He had a really nice catch early in the game over the middle where he got popped pretty good and hung on to it. And then he went out with an injury.
Okay, so he did get hurt, and that's what I thought. And after the Whitner hit, that's right. Yep, I totally forgot about that part. It would have been nice to see him run because I wonder if it. I don't know if it's going to be Leshore versus Wynn as much as it might end up being Riddick versus Wynn. And obviously, all the reports have been how good Riddick has looked.
Yeah.
Hopefully this injury doesn't slow him down, or he still gets a shot to show what he can do. But since we're talking about it, why don't we go ahead and kind of reshape the roster and the depth chart as we kind of see it going forward? Obviously, there's been official depth charts that have come out, or unofficial, I think are the better words, and they mean nothing. So we can go ahead and break up one that means nothing too. So a guy to you who looks like he's on his way up the depth chart right now.
For me, last year, Joseph Foria emerged on the scene, and he was catching passes, and he's a very personable guy, and we had a chance to talk to him on the program and everything, but he couldn't block. He was a one-trick pony. And I think his game is really developing, and through camp and even in this game, what I've seen is he looked really good just blocking. And he's going to make catches, and we know he can do that, and he's got great range with his hands, and he'll make difficult catches too, and he can get open over the middle of the field. I think Joseph Foria could make a run at being the top tight end on this team as early as this season and early on in this season even. I'm not. I don't think I'm jumping to conclusions with him. I really liked what I saw of him in this game and throughout training camp. So Foria is someone for me that's it's moving quickly up the depth chart.
I have to agree with your assessment as far as, and God, do I hate doing it, but I have to agree with your assessment as far as Foria's blocking. I thought that he was very much improved. There was one Olay block where I was like, what, are you even trying? What's going on here, buddy? But it's the only one I counted. I actually started a counter at that point. I was like, oh, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't notice another one. That doesn't mean there wasn't. It's kind of hard to watch all 11 guys, but I don't know that he's going to overtake Pettigrew. I thought Pettigrew did okay. He did all right blocking. Neither one of them is going to spring a running back on his own, or
Right.
at least not do it very often. But obviously we didn't see anything as far as Pettigrew in the passing game. But I thought he did all right blocking. I'm happy he's still around, I guess, in that respect. As far as my player I see moving up the depth chart, and it's already happened. I promise you I had this in our little rundown before the news broke that Mosley had overtaken Fairley's spot, and Caldwell saying all the right things. This is about getting guys reps with other guys, blah, 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 blah. Then Risdon obviously just told us it could be related to weight, but Mosley looked really good in this game. I think he's earned the right possibly to start. I thought Fairley looked, fairly lethargic, and I thought Mosley was constantly making plays. It was impressive to watch, and it was in the run defense. He's not the greatest pass rusher, but I thought he really made a statement.
I think it's a statement that he's been making, and he's been consistently good, and fairly is enigmatic at best. And I think I noted it might have been 2 shows ago that he looked really great in camp when I was there, but then he'll flip a switch and just look terrible, and he's gaining weight again or whatever it may be. It's just there's no consistency to Nick Fairley, whereas with C.J. Mosley, you know what you're getting, and it's very good. He's definitely a starter quality player. Putting him alongside Ndamukong Suh and whatever rotation you develop along the defensive line, I'm with you. I loved what I saw out of Mosley. I always do, though. I'm very rarely disappointed by what I see out of C.J. Mosley, and that's someone that you want on the field plenty of the time.
Well, from the guys moving up the depth chart to the guys moving down, who you got on the negative side there, Nick?
You know, all camp we've heard about how good Kevin Ogletree has been and how he's trying to lock down that third receiver spot. And again, not jumping to conclusions, but he had one target in this game and it went right through his hands and bounced off his chest. And if you're in a receiver battle or any position battle for that matter, when you get your chances, you have to take advantage of them. Especially when you have limited chances like Ogletree did in this game, where he only had the one. It stood out to me because it was the only time we saw him, and he missed a ball that he had to have. So I don't know how you can not. I don't know where he stands on the depth chart, or so be it, but he just had a bad impression to me. I don't know if he's moving down the depth chart, but Kevin Ogletree did not impress. He missed the one ball that he really needed to have.
Yeah, and that's the whole point as far as this goes. He did make a poor impression. That ball, and that's one of the drops that I'm talking about for Orlovsky, and I think it was Orlovsky's first throw, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So kind of hard to even establish a rhythm when you got guys dropping it, as we know from Stafford last year. So,
and not even a tough drop, but it hit him right in the chest. It went right through his hands.
And there was, right along the sideline, no worries about getting smoked. That was very disappointing to see, especially, like you said, after all the reports that have come out. For me, I think it's Corey Hilliard.
Yeah.
I was very unimpressed with his play. He did not look good. He got right off the jump. He was beat by Paul Kruger on just a straight speed move. There were 2 straight beats late in the first quarter where he looked terrible. He was responsible for the Orlovsky sack. Collins was riding the blitzer and he didn't do great, but he did ride him around, which is his job. Orlovsky went to step up, and Hilliard's man just came crashing right into him. And Waddle played well. I thought Waddle was maybe the best offensive lineman they played the other day as far as Detroit is concerned. So I think that Corey Hilliard is in real danger of losing that number 1 spot.
Yeah, Waddle, I think he played a lot with the second string as well. I saw him play almost. He might have played the entire first half, but regardless, Hilliard, like you said, did not impress when he was in there. He didn't look good when he was in there. This is a real battle at the right tackle position. It might be the closest one of any right now for me. it's neck and neck, and Hilliard didn't do himself any favors in this game. He looked slow-footed. Like you said, it was a basic move from Kruger when he got by him. I mean, these are things that just can't happen, even in the first preseason game, especially for a guy battling for his position. You need to see more out of him, and we didn't. He's going to have more chances. This isn't a battle where you're going to name the guy right now. It's going to wait until the end of the preseason to name the starter, I think. But yeah, Hilliard loses the first battle in this war.
Well, there's a lot of other guys fighting probably with more drastic stakes, if you will. Guys trying to make the roster. Who's looking up in terms of making the roster to you?
I don't want to overstate it, but if you're looking up in terms of making the roster, how can you not say Kellen Moore's looking up? I mean, playing against third string, so be it, but he flashed upside, and it's something he's been on this roster for a couple years now. We wanted to see it, and he at least flashed it in this game. There's potential with Kellen Moore, and Orlovsky looked just as average to below average as we all know he can and will be. And I don't want to make that a detriment to Dan Orlovsky, but that he is who he is at this point. There is no upside to Dan Orlovsky, and I'm not saying Kellen Moore is the answer. I don't think he is. But in terms of making the roster, I'd say he definitely helped his cause.
Well, for me, it's Reggie Bush with that drop. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to but, no, it's been a common refrain throughout this podcast. George Wynn, he played well. He showed a good burst. There was a particular draw he had where he went off the right side, and he kind of exploded once he hit the line of scrimmage.
He was quick.
Yeah, he was very quick, and he had a little physicality to him with that tough catch at the end of the half. And he was a decisive runner. And when he did hesitate, he got the ball poked out. So if he can learn to stay decisive and keep charging forward, there might be a spot for him on this roster.
Yeah, especially I think even if he has just one more fumble or loses the ball one more time, I think that is it for his chances. But other than that, he was great in this game. He was decisive. He hit the hole with authority. He found space. He found lanes to run through, all of that. I want to see more from him, and I think that's the most important thing is that the coaching staff is going to want to see more of Wynn as well throughout the preseason. He earned himself more chances, and he earned himself more time, and that's what's important moving forward. Some guys took the opposite approach in terms of making the roster, guys that are on the downswing and really hurt their chances in this game.
Well, for me, it's Rodney Austin. I thought he kind of looked like a turnstile. He's been kind of trumped up as this guy who's coming along. He's coming along. Oh, he's looking great this year. This is finally the year that he solidifies one of those backup guard spots. And I thought he was drastically outplayed by Garrett Reynolds. And the tape really bore that out. When the rushing attack really started clicking there in the second quarter and second half, whichever it was, get they got the top of my head now. But it was Garrett Reynolds. He was really driving those holes. And the running backs, like George Wynn, were getting through there. And the grades bear it out. While Reynolds posted a 1.6, Austin was a negative 1.1. I really think Reynolds played that much better than Austin, and I think Austin's maybe on that roster bubble now.
Yeah, you noticed Reynolds, and you noticed him for the right reasons, whereas you didn't with Austin. So I'm in agreement with you there. Guy looking down for me, not because of his play, as we mentioned earlier, it's Tavecchio. Giorgio, I believe. We didn't get to see him kick field goals, and if let's say this happens in game 2, 3, 4, where Freese comes in and makes his kicks, and then we don't get to see Tavecchio, he might lose this job by process of elimination just because he doesn't get the chances. I mean, we need to see him kick field goals, and if Freese is making his and Tavecchio doesn't get opportunities, then he's never going to have a chance to take that spot and make this roster. So by no fault of his own in this case, but I think Tavecchio has to be on the downswing just because he didn't get the opportunities in this game.
Well, yeah, I can understand why, especially with Freese presumably having a leg up due to the drafting, although I'm still not totally sure if I buy that. If Caldwell's thing is wins and accountability and not playing favorites, I don't think that we can just give it to Freese. But, well, that's all past history now. We've actually got to talk about a football game, and, well, we actually get to move on from a football game and put it behind us. Why don't we break out some news and notes? Oh, wait. I guess we're still going to talk about that game.
Well, I was shocked. It was to think that this was the most watched preseason game in NFL Network history. I didn't realize it was like 2.82 million viewers or something. I didn't realize that many people really wanted to see the debut of Jim Caldwell as the Lions head coach. I thought that was a shocking revelation that many people tuned in to see Caldwell take the handle for the Lions.
Well, when you want to see Joe Lombardi's offense, you want to see what Terrell Austin's going to do on defense. I can understand the intrigue.
Yeah, people are clearly listening to the podcast and hear all the storylines we're throwing down, and that has to be why they tuned into this game.
Of course, and well, you know who they should tune in to see next week. The Lions did make one roster move this week. They signed or I'm not even sure how this works, but it was kind of like a waiver exchange with the Bengals or something along those lines. Either way, they got rid of Quentin Payton and they picked up Connor Vernon, who was a favorite of mine coming into last year's draft, 2013 draft. I think holds the ACC record for either catches or yards or maybe both. So he was very productive in college. He is not big, 6'1", 196. He is not fast. He ran a 4.68, and he has a 32.5-inch vertical. But he's tough. He went to Duke, so he's got to have some intelligence. And like I said, he was very productive. He has great hands. And while I don't think he's probably going to make the roster, I'm just happy he's in Detroit.
Yeah, I think it was a day after we recorded the podcast last week, and we dedicated maybe 10 minutes to Jonathan Baldwin and his potential for if he was going to make this roster, what was going to happen with him. They already waived him. There was injury issue or whatever it was. I didn't even pay that much attention to it. But, yeah, we dedicate so much time on the podcast to what he can do, and there's another wide receiver already gone, so here's the next one to get a chance at it and see what he can do. So I know very little to nothing about Connor Vernon. I won't lie to you folks, but this wide receiver race or battle for positions and spots is wide open, so anyone and everyone is welcome to take their turn and try and stick. So we'll see what Connor Vernon can do. We already noted the news note that Nick Fairley's practicing with the second team. Caldwell says there's nothing to it. I'm pretty sure we're both in agreement here that there is plenty to it, and C.J. Mosley is laying claim to that spot. So I'm right with that, right? You're with me on that. There's more to it than what Caldwell's saying, for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to go ahead and say it's a huge deal, but I will say that there is some significance to it. I don't think you do it unless there's a need for it. And to be fair about Connor Vernon, part of the reason I know so much about him is I got assigned a scouting profile for him, so that makes it easy.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah. You spent a lot of time on a guy you never knew before. Week 2, improvements we want to see against the Oakland Raiders. Brandon, what improvement you really from week 1 that you didn't like that you want to see better in week 2 and think you can see better in week 2?
Well, the first thing I want to note is there will be an improvement in real-time coverage. I've signed on with Bleacher Report to do their in-game blog for the Lions, write a preview piece, and write a grades directly after, and it all starts this week. So if you want to go ahead and find me on Bleacher Report, you can make comments or even tweet, and maybe they'll make the article while we're watching the game together. Shameless plug.
No, hey, I hope they're an improvement on the ones I did last year because I know there's a high bar for you to try and get over.
Yep, and once I step over that, I'll aim for something significant. But no, in all honesty, I want to see the O-line improve. It's not that the starting O-line was that terrible. I'm just so scared that maybe last year was a bit of an anomaly. And without that offensive line, and everybody talking about Stafford this, Stafford that, he's the one that drives his team, and I agree, but that's probably the biggest difference between Orlovsky and Moore Saturday night is that Orlovsky didn't have time and Moore did. If Stafford isn't going to get time during the year, it doesn't matter what weapons are out there. I really want to see the O-line altogether, opening holes, and specifically the right tackle not showing guys how to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, and you're going to see the O-line with the first-team offense at least a little bit more in week 2 and just see how the whole unit gels, really. I mean, the O-line was, I think, sketchy at best to say in week 1. So just seeing them, we only saw the starting position players for, a series in week 1. So we're going to get to see more of them in week 2 and how they gel with the O-line. It's definitely critical.
Yeah, it's extremely critical, and it makes me nervous. I've talked about it a little bit this offseason. But also, the other one is ball security. That was a killer for the Lions last year. That isn't an anomaly to 1 year in particular. And I mean that more than one way. There was obviously the fumble by Wynn. There were also at least 5 drops this game. Let me check. Yeah, 5 drops this game. That was another problem last year, and I know it's not technically ball security if you want to put it that way, but I think it kind of fits all in the same place. Get the ball, hold on to the ball. I really need to see that.
It's so simple and obvious, but it still needs to be said because it's an issue that just it doesn't seem to go away with this team. Whether it be drops or fumbles or however the ball gets on the ground, it does. they can't seem to hang on to it. So yeah, it's an improvement that needs to be seen in week 2, week 3, week 4, and then once the regular season starts. Because even if it is perfect in week 2, it's an issue that's ongoing with this team, and I don't know if it's going to go away, but it's one of the biggest issues facing this team is ball security. It's always there with them. It's something we always have to talk about, and it gets old, but it's a constant problem, especially the drops. It's so difficult to see these drops, especially the one we talked about with Ogletree, where it just hits him right in the chest. It's like good football teams don't make these mistakes so frequently as the Lions do. So I'm glad you hit on it. If you didn't, I was going to have to and go on a tangent because it's definitely a problem.
Well, those drops, I think, could inspire a new drop, a sound drop. I was thinking of the Varsity Blues clip. It just hit me where Tweeter's yelling at whatever his name is, Billy Bob, to catch the ball. Catch the ball. It's right there. Just catch the ball.
Just catch the ball. Yeah.
Exactly.
Whew. Let it out. Yeah. If we can find that drop, I'm more than it'll probably get plenty of play on this show because of how many drops the Lions tend to have. Maybe that'll change moving forward. I don't know. Let's be the sunny optimist or whatever. I had an improvement that I want to see in week 2. Red zone offense, red zone efficiency, however you want to word it. Lions were 0 for 3 in the red zone against Cleveland. It's week 1. It was a bunch of different offenses that went 0 for 3. It wasn't Stafford and company doing it every time, obviously, but still, you want to see better than that out of whoever's on offense. You want to see this team being able to finish drives and get into the end zone, which they just weren't able to do. So if and when they're inside the 20, which hopefully they will be in week 2 against Oakland, finish the drive, get in the end zone, power running, play action, however it may be, find ways to score points when you're that close to the end zone. It's another obvious statement, but after you go 0 for 3, I think it needs to be made.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I think we'll see more going forward as they maybe bring in a little bit of spice to that offense. I'm not going to get too concerned about it. With the exception of week 3, I'd like to see at least one touchdown in that first half when the starters are playing.
You're not asking for too much, Brandon, I swear.
Well, but I am asking for something from the fans out there and the listeners. I'm asking them to find us on social media. You can find us here at Lions Central Radio on Facebook. Interact with us, bring up questions, do whatever you like, make fun of Nick. I don't care. You can also find us at Twitter at Lions Central PFC. You can find me personally at Brandon Alisoglu. That's ALISOGLU. And you can yell at Nick at Nick Kostora, KOSTORA.
That's right. The format, folks, is going to stay pretty similar. Reflecting on week 2 and beyond. I'm sure we'll have Jeff on again at some point in the future. Let us know if there's any segments you want added or detracted, what you liked, what you didn't. Please sound off to us on Facebook, Twitter, however you want to get at us. We love hearing from you. Until next week, folks, when the Lions and Raiders recap begins. For Brandon Alisoglu, I am Nick Kostora. Thank you so much for tuning in to Lions Central Radio.